got to work with some youth from Eastside Baptist Church in Marietta. We got to work at Rosemont Community Camp, which is a day camp put together by several churches and community leaders in the Rosemont neighborhood. And together, these churches and community members are able to host a camp for 5 weeks throughout the summer for the neighborhood kids. So they can be busy and learning and playing throughout the day while their parents are at work. At the center, we talk a lot about crossing boundaries on their work sites. And a lot of times we have groups coming in from areas outside of Baltimore who are hesitant about making relationships with kids who are different from them, whether that's racially or just different backgrounds, or being an inner city kid versus a kid who grew up in the suburbs. This week I was able to watch that hesitation go away as the youth kind of took the lead from the kids who were at the camp, whether they were 4 years old or in 7th grade. They were able to watch them and their curiosity and their willingness to cross boundaries, and they kind of took that lead in that relationship of saying, the 2nd grade child trusts me and wants to know about me, therefore I can do the same with others around me. And so that was very meaningful to watch happen.
So I worked at Knox Presbyterian Church with Eastside Baptist. This is the first time we've worked with Knox Presbyterian Church, and we instantly felt at home. They really made us feel welcomed and really kind of took us under their wing for the week. And during that week, we helped paint a mural on the side of their church. They had this blank wall, and they wanted to add some life into that neighborhood, so we helped them paint a beautiful mural. We also helped out with their vacation Bible school, and those kids that were there from Knox just instantly fell in love with the youth from Eastside Baptist. And by Friday, all the little camper girls were like really into doing the youth from Eastside Baptist girls' hair, and it was super cute. And they painted together, and you could just tell that they were really making genuine and meaningful relationships. And by the end of VBS on Friday, they were really sad to part from each other.
At the center, we do some Bible study work with our youth through daily devotions and reflections, but also through evening programming. And a lot of that is structured around kind of changing the way youth read scripture and using this new lens. And a lot of it is focusing on the fact that when we read the Bible, we often put ourselves in the Christ position or the Good Samaritan position, but recognizing that that's not always our role, and it won't be our role. And that there are other people around us who are also taking Christ roles or the Good Samaritan roles. And a lot of times they're the people that we're told need a Christ or Good Samaritan role in their life, or a helper role. And so this week, by these children having such an impact on our youth, by them teaching them how to break boundaries and be creative and imaginative, our youth were able to see Christ in these children, as opposed to just the youth themselves coming in as the servant Christ role in the neighborhood.
We had some free time one morning, and we did something called a scripture scavenger hunt. So we had 10 scriptures that we were given, and we read the scriptures, and what we had to do was go out into the neighborhood and kind of find pictures or people or something that kind of represented that scripture. So as we were walking around, we came to a park in the Mount Vernon area, and I saw this guy sitting on a bench, and I said hello to him, and he kind of asked us what we were doing, and I told him we were doing this scripture scavenger hunt. And for the next 30 minutes, we talked about scripture with him, and it was amazing. And it was a huge crossing boundary moment. And that morning we had just talked about the road to Emmaus, and I had asked them to think about where they saw Jesus on the road that day. And I instantly knew that when we met this man, his name is Dwight, that this was going to be something that we were going to talk about that day. And some of the kids were a little nervous because this is not something that they, do all the time, or they don't really talk to people that they don't know. But they all really embraced Dwight, and it was just amazing to watch them read give him a scripture and have Dwight kind of interpret it back to them. And you could just see, even from that moment, that God was really there and he brought us all together in that moment. It was one of the best moments from that week, and definitely showed like what we teach here at the center, that these relationships can really be made just by one little instance of saying hello to someone that you don't know.
The third of the group from Eastside Baptist Church worked with Babcock Presbyterian, which is a church on Loch Raven Boulevard outside of Baltimore City in the county. When groups sign up for a mission experience, they don't think about going to a suburb, but over the last 2 decades, there's been a dramatic increase in the poverty level in suburban neighborhoods, and a really steep increase in the level of food insecurity in suburban communities. And so in a suburb, you just don't have access to the same social scaffolding that people can access in a city. And so there are some really creative ways that churches are stepping into that, including Babcock. Leaders from the church had just finished working with the director of the center, Kate, for a couple of years, and they decided they wanted to start taking some more risks to be in relationship with their neighbors. And one way was an ongoing project that they'd done with food insecurity. So our group canvassed the neighborhood and then collected all of the food that had been left out by neighbors, and it went into their food ministry, where they leave it out in blessing boxes out front, and it's gone the next day. And so it was a good way to add to the collection that the church already had. And then the church resurrected a VBS for after school kids that are at the church every day after school, and for neighborhood kids who needed a place to be for that week. And so our volunteers stepped in alongside some really wonderful leaders from the congregation, and they played games and they sang songs, and learned a lot about what it means to be a community in the suburbs. I think learned a lot, even though that was close to their demographic, learned a lot about their own home by being somewhere else.